So, hi again. Here is me one more time. Sorry about that. And the first thing I have to apologize because I'm not economist, but I'm going to present the cost efficiency evaluation of the vCare solution that we have done for the 4 pilots. So, first of all, the aim of this kind of study is to measure the effectiveness, in this case in terms of quality of life, once again, compared to the regular rehabilitation. And in order to do that, I'm going to present a brief revision of the literature. What we have done was a systematic review specifically for cardiological and neurological diseases, comparing the economical evaluation that has been done already for these pathologies. Secondly, I'm going to present, I will try to be brief about this because are the clinical results in terms of the estimation of the effectiveness, utility, and results for the 4 pilots. So this is going to be a summary, and I will try not to repeat myself. The third part is the cost analysis of vCare for the 4 pilots compared to the traditional rehabilitation in each country. And then I will finish with a micro cost-effective study for Parkinson's. So, as you know, we are talking a lot about rehabilitation here. It's prescribed to enhance the patient's quality of life and is based on the patient's needs, goals, and preference. We have to take into account the patient's needs, not just what the physician said. So, telerehabilitation, by definition, is the delivery of rehabilitation services at a distance by means of electronic information and communication technology. So knowing this by the literature, I will go through the systematic review. Why? Because in most countries, as I have said previously this morning in Spain, rehabilitation actually is not integrated as a standard care in the public health system, so we have a problem and a gap there. And even though the situation is even worse in a low or middle income countries. So we need this question, we will have to find a solution or an answer. Is telerehabilitation cost effective? Let's see what the systematic review said. The objective we follow is to investigate the costs and the results, the clinical results, of telerehabilitation in 2 pathologies, general pathologies, neurological and cardiological diseases. For doing that, a training librarian performed a search until January 2021, and 3 experienced reviewers screened separately this database. Actually, this is a manuscript that is under review in the last step in Frontiers in Medicine. We hope to publish it very soon. So I'm going to enter into detail because I hope that this will be published soon. So after we did a systematic review, we found 4 types of economic evaluation. That are cost effectiveness, cost utility, cost benefit, and cost analysis. For vCare pilots, I'm going to focus on cost effectiveness and cost analysis. Why? Because regarding cost effectiveness, we need clinical results and quality of life. That will be the case of Parkinson's. Because in order to analyze quality of life, the pilot have to be at least 12 weeks. That's why we just did the cost effectiveness for the Parkinson's. And for the rest of the diseases, we did the cost analysis. Initially, we found 430 studies that match our keywords, but then according to our inclusion and exclusion criteria, we found just 8 published manuscripts that meet our criteria. So 3 studies were neurological diseases, actually all of them a stroke, and 5 studies were for cardiological diseases. Regarding the neurological diseases was 1 cost analysis, the other 1 cost benefit analysis, and the last 1 cost effectiveness analysis. And for the cardiological diseases, the 5 of them was cost-utility analysis, with the quality of life measured with the Eurocall 5D, as we have done with the vCare, or the SF36. Normally, the duration that we have found for the telerehabilitation have been ranged from 6 to 48 weeks. But the common period for all of them is 12 weeks. That was the minimum goal for the vCare. And the predominant type of rehabilitation has been not life-guided by clinicians. That means that the clinicians were not at the house or in the moment presently with the patient when they were performing the rehabilitation. These are the results that I have said. I'm not going to enter into detail right now. We can talk about this later if you want, because I'm going to focus on the conclusions that we have found for this systematic review. So this, the comparison between cost and cost effectiveness of different interventions is very important to have a better knowledge if this telerehabilitation tool can be implemented in your health system or not. There are really few studies reported about economic evaluation for their rehabilitation or for their telerehabilitation. And actually, in the case of neurological diseases, for example, no, we didn't find any study related to Parkinson's disease. So more studies are needed for that part. So now what happens with vCare? Is it cost effective? Is an appropriate telerehabilitation tool for neurological and cardiological diseases? Let's see, and after that you can make your own conclusions. So these are the clinical and common outcomes that we have measured for the 4 pathologies, and here are the results for each pathology. In the case of a stroke, they found a tendency of improvement in clinical scales, specifically in quality of life, anxiety, mobility, and usual activities. In our case for Parkinson's, we found statistically significant differences and statistically significant improvement in cognition and in quality of life, and also better capabilities of daily living. For the heart failure and ischemic heart disease, the results are almost the same for both of them. They found also a tendency of improvement in the quality of life, in anxiety and depression, less nicotine dependence, and effort capacity was better, and also the lipid profile. You can see here almost the same results for the ischemic heart disease. And I need to highlight the countries that were involved from the clinical side, because you need to understand the public or the private health system where the pilot has been carried out. In the case of a stroke was Italy, in Milan. For us, Parkinson is in Spain, in Vizcaya, the Basque region, and for heart failure and ischemic heart disease has been in Romania, Bucharest. So each health system is different, and this is really important. So regarding for cost, now I'm going to talk the cost between the telerehabilitation or the vCare system that has been used and also the rehabilitation, if this rehabilitation has been done during the same period. In the case of the stroke, they perform 6 days of rehabilitation every week. 4 alternative days for motor session and 2 for the cognitive one. And they have run this during 2 months. And these are the structure of their rehabilitation for stroke. This is an example of 1 week. And here are the costs. Maybe you cannot see because there is a lot of money there. So here is the summary. So for the traditional rehabilitation, you can see that it is around 4,000 euros, but the vCare system will be less costly, around 1,000 euros. This is our structure for Parkinson's. For the rehabilitation, you can see the same structure for both of them. In our case, we perform 4 days of rehabilitation, 2 alternative days for motor session and cognitive session. And the duration was around 45 minutes per session. These are our costs, again. And here is the summary. For us, the traditional rehabilitation will be around 5,000 euros and the vCare system will be around 2,000 euros. I have to say here that this is an estimation. This is not a real cost because we don't have rehabilitation in Osakidecha, in our public health system. That's why it's an estimation. For heart failure and again for ischemic heart disease, the structure of the rehabilitation is almost the same. They perform 2-3 times a week, depends on the patient, and the duration for each session lasts 30 to 45 minutes. Here are the costs specifically for heart failure. And here is the summary. The traditional rehabilitation will be around 1,000 euros and the vCare system around 800 euros. The ischemic heart disease, the same structure, almost the same cost, but is a little bit less expensive. The vCare system for ischemic heart disease is around 700 euros. So this is the specific cost-effectiveness study, a micro-study for Parkinson's, where you can see the vCare was around 2,000 euros and the estimation for the regular or the conventional rehabilitation, if can be performed in our public health system, will be much higher, 5,000 euros. This is because the motor and neuropsychological rehabilitation in terms of the neuropsychologists or the physiotherapists, because actually the follow-up consultation during 3 months in Parkinson's will be 600 euros, around 600 euros. So what we have done is a micro-study using the MAFAPE tool, which was recommended by European Commission. And here you can see the figure. In this case, we didn't include the 5,000 euros that will cost the traditional rehabilitation. We included the current treatment cost for Parkinson's, to be honest, and not just an estimation. So we wanted to see if this was cost effectiveness, even if it wasn't rehabilitation at all. So taking into account the threshold of 20,000 per quali, telerehabilitation, actually, even without taking into account the whole traditional regular rehabilitation, is a cost-effective alternative to the actual one, to the conventional rehabilitation. And also, if conventional rehabilitation were performed, and also if the improvement of quality would not have been greater than the telerehabilitation that we have done with vCare, even though the telerehabilitation will be the dominant alternative, since it will be the most effective one and also the least expensive alternative. Oh? Is it working? Mine no. Okay, yeah, conclusions. For Parkinson's disease, the rehabilitation, and I have said, is a cost-effective alternative compared to the traditional one. Therefore, we have to recommend its implementation. We could recommend its implementation. I want to highlight that I'm talking all the time about regular rehabilitation and telerehabilitation, but actually the vCare is not just telerehabilitation, it's a virtual coach that includes telerehabilitation, artificial intelligence. I'm not going to enter into the discussion about artificial intelligence and machine learning, but I think both of them are included, and makes possible the telerehabilitation, also the avatar, to adapt and personalize the treatment for the patient. For a stroke, actually, with a cumulative saving of around 2,000 euros, is also a good alternative compared to the conventional rehabilitation. And the same for heart failure and ischemic heart disease. vCare has lower cost than conventional rehabilitation. So in general, in order to finish with this, is vCare, from our point of view, is clinically and also cost-effective tool compared with the traditional one if we take into account the clinical results that we have right now with a small sample, and also regarding the cost that we have right now. So I want to finish that vCare seems to be an optimal tool to be used as a virtual coach and also telerehabilitation. Thank you very much.